Every civilization begins with something that feels solid, trusted, and quietly agreed upon by everyone who depends on it. Long before markets exist, movement begins. Goods change hands, promises are made. Order emerges when repetition feels safe, predictable, and no longer worth questioning or examining too closely. Over time, systems stop being remembered as human constructions and start being treated as permanent realities. Balance is never permanent. It only appears stable when nothing is actively challenging it from within or outside. Prosperity creates stillness, and stillness gradually trains people to trust what surrounds them without resistance. Motion draws attention, but gradual slowing almost always goes unnoticed for far longer than it should. Structures stretch forward because no one imagines a future where they might actually weaken or end. Expansion always feels justified while it is happening, and profitable for them. Majority of participants involved. Exchange works best when trust operates silently, without being examined, questioned, or openly defended. Growth rarely announces the moment it has quietly reached its natural and structural limit. Value becomes abstract once it no longer needs to be explained, justified, or actively protected. Abundance narrows so gradually that its disappearance feels normal rather than immediately alarming. Thresholds are crossed quietly, without ceremony, announcements, or any visible disruption at the time. Large groups no longer need direction when belief becomes shared, reinforced, and self-sustaining. Time accelerates most when no one feels pressure to slow down, pause, or reflect. Foundations continue carrying enormous weight long after people stop examining their condition. And the earliest warning signs are never dramatic, only unresolved, subtle, and consistently ignored. What begins as confidence slowly hardens into something quieter, more stable, and far more dangerous than anyone is prepared to question or challenge. Repeated success stops being examined carefully and starts being treated as the natural order of how the system is supposed to function. Over time, success is no longer measured by outcomes or resilience, but by how many people continue to participate without hesitation. The central question shifts from whether the system can hold to whether everyone still believes that it will. Once belief becomes widespread, hesitation no longer looks like caution, and instead starts to resemble ignorance or incompetence. At this stage, risk has not disappeared from the system. It has simply been removed from open discussion. Alignment becomes more valuable than accuracy, and speed becomes more rewarded than patience, restraint, or independent judgment. Decisions stop expressing individual reasoning and begin signaling loyalty to a shared direction that no one wants to leave. Stepping away now feels more costly than remaining exposed, even as underlying vulnerability continues to grow. Confidence feeds on itself, reinforced not by verification or proof, but by repetition and shared momentum. Warnings are not rejected directly. They are reframed as temporary obstacles that progress will eventually overcome. Language evolves to protect expansion and continuity, not to describe the true condition of the system underneath. Limits are no longer treated as boundaries, but as inefficiencies that will be solved later by future innovation. As long as nothing visibly breaks, belief continues to strengthen without interruption or meaningful resistance. Pressure accumulates silently because resistance now feels irrational, unnecessary, and socially unacceptable. The system appears stable precisely because doubt is no longer tolerated or allowed to slow momentum. Its stability now depends entirely on everyone continuing to believe in the same direction at the same time. And this is how fragility settles quietly at the very center of confidence, unnoticed until it is too late. At first, the system absorbs tension easily because confidence still masks how much strain is quietly building underneath every decision. Small irregularities appear, but they are explained away as temporary noise rather than signals of structural imbalance forming over time. Because success has been consistent, deviation feels impossible, even when conditions begin shifting beneath the surface. The same force that once drove expansion now amplifies every weakness the system previously learned to ignore. Liquidity tightens not suddenly, but selectively, retreating first from places where confidence hesitates even slightly. Trust contracts unevenly, creating gaps where coordination once felt automatic and effortless. What was once a shared direction becomes a crowded position with too many participants seeking the same exit. Movement slows, not because people choose caution, but because pathways narrow faster than decisions can adapt. The system starts reacting to itself, magnifying internal signals rather than responding to external reality. Attempts to stabilize conditions arrive late, constrained by assumptions formed during earlier success. Measures designed for growth prove ineffective when momentum begins moving in reverse. The structure resists adjustment because flexibility was removed in the name of efficiency long before. Pressure that once pushed everything forward now compresses the system inward from every side simultaneously. Confidence does not vanish here. It fractures into uncertainty, hesitation, and competing interpretations of risk. Coordination breaks down as individuals act defensively instead of collectively. The same alignment that once accelerated growth now accelerates instability across every layer. From this point on, outcomes are no longer shaped by strategy, but by reaction speed and fear of exposure. And the system crosses a threshold where reversal is no longer controlled, only endured. As confidence collapses, behavior shifts rapidly from coordination toward protection, and survival instincts begin overriding any remaining sense of collective responsibility. Actions become faster but less informed, driven by urgency rather than understanding, as individuals prioritize immediate safety over long-term coherence. Signals multiply and contradict each other, making it increasingly difficult to distinguish meaningful information from noise or delayed reactions. Fear spreads not because danger is fully understood, but because uncertainty removes any shared frame of reference. Trust erodes unevenly, disappearing first where exposure is highest and confidence was previously taken for granted. Decisions that once felt calculated now feel rushed, reactive, and shaped by the movements of others nearby. The system fragments into isolated responses, each amplifying instability instead of restoring balance or coordination. Attempts to exit accelerate congestion, turning movement itself into an additional source of pressure and disruption. Institutions hesitate, constrained by frameworks built for stability rather than rapid systemic stress. Interventions arrive disconnected, addressing symptoms without reaching the deeper behavioral drivers already in motion. Narratives compete to explain events, but none regain authority or restore shared confidence. Participants stop seeking accuracy and instead seek confirmation that they are not alone in their reactions. Volatility increases as expectations reset faster than structures can adapt to new realities. Loss becomes psychological before it becomes material, shaping decisions long before outcomes are fully visible. The system enters a phase where momentum feeds on fear rather than belief or optimism. Coordination fails, not from lack of rules, but from lack of trust in those rules under pressure. Every action now carries amplified consequences, as margins for error disappear almost entirely. And panic completes the inversion, turning the same collective force that built expansion into the engine of collapse. After the collapse, everything slows down, not because problems are solved, but because energy is drained and even simple movement begins to feel heavy. People look backward, not to learn deeply, but to understand how things slipped forward without anyone clearly deciding to stop. Explanations appear everywhere: Yet none truly describe what people felt while choices were being made day after day. Responsibility feels shared, distant, and spread so thin that no one feels fully responsible for what actually happened. Stability returns slowly, without confidence, and without the relief most people expected after the damage was done. Rules come back into place, but they feel cautious, temporary, and easier to bend than anyone wants to admit. Caution is accepted again, simply because recent memory still feels uncomfortable and close enough to influence behavior. For a while, restraint feels sensible, reasonable, and necessary to avoid repeating mistakes that still feel fresh.
Silence replaces urgency, and decisions take longer as movement loses its former confidence and speed. Over time, discomfort fades and familiarity quietly begins to feel safe again without asking permission. Confidence returns slowly, without noise, without celebration, and without clearly announcing its presence. It arrives wearing the language of experience, improvement, and better control over future outcomes. People believe they are safer now, protected by what they have already lived through and survived. They trust experience to guide them when signals begin to feel familiar rather than threatening. But behavior has not changed as much as people believe it has when comfort starts returning. Old habits return quietly, hidden beneath new words, updated explanations, and softer warnings. The pattern waits patiently, unchanged, until conditions once again feel comfortable and predictable. And that quiet comfort is where the cycle prepares itself, slowly and silently. Repeat.